getting a snub like what Trae Young got after the All-Star starters were announced, I think that was a snub that felt like it was just of epic proportion. So of course we know that the usual suspects are in there. So LeBron James will be the captain for the East team, West team, excuse me. Giannis Antetokounmpo, the camp for the East team, captain, that is. But when you start going down that list of starters, that is where it gets tricky because Trae Young finished 7th in overall All-Star voting amongst Eastern guards. However, when you start digging into the numbers, 5th in fan voting, not a big deal. 6th in media voting, still pretty solid. 12th in player voting out of 12? Make it make sense? I mean, are you surprised?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about like that, right? Because I guess you had some write-ins because it was saying, from my understanding, it was like it was 2 guys that was written in that wasn't even on the list. So, and from a player standpoint, so when you think about that, that kind of just makes you think like people really don't. The guys that in the NBA don't really mess with Trae Young like that, or do they not respect his game? And those are kind of questions I started thinking about when you think about, you know, how he's viewed amongst his peers, right?
Yeah.
Because we all know the media looks at him a certain way, cool, 5th or whatever, or 6th. And then you have the fan voting, obviously, you know, he appeals to the fan, obviously, here in Atlanta as well. So it just makes you think, like, I know for me, covering this team, I kind of like having a guy who's not well liked amongst his peers because he ain't with all the you know, the buddy, you know, kicking with everybody and all, hey, let me go team up and go play with you and all that stuff. So that's the kind of thing I start thinking about when those guys are so tight like that. Now, Trae has his guys they are cool with, you know, with Clutch Sports and obviously with LeBron and anybody, Donovan Mitchell as well. He's up behind that representation. So I don't get too concerned just from a standpoint of them not really respecting his game. I think it's more so of, you know, I hate to use this word because I feel like it's overused, but they might just be hating.
I don't know if I can go with that. Okay. I'm going to tell you what I think it could be. Not necessarily that, but a couple different things. Now, going back to the point about the league being buddy. I mean, that's what the league is. So my question would be, if this is I don't want to say indictment, but for lack of a better term, an indictment on whether or not he's a likable guy amongst the players, it does beg the question of, if this was an indictment on how they feel about him, does that impact Landry Field's ability to attract more high-level, A-grade free agents? That's where my concern was.
I smell you. Oh.
So you've got that piece, and then you've got the other piece of a couple of NBA writers, like national writers, have said that there are executives around this league who are like, yeah, he's a problem. And not in the good way, you know, like when we compliment you and say, yeah, he's
right, yeah.
They're going in that other direction. So I was wondering as well, like, who knows? There could be some commentary like that out there such that players don't want to vote for him. But I'm going to throw this one out to you as well.
Let me add something to what you just said, though. As far as with the players coming over, you know, Landry Field's been able to track players coming over. And I think that's why I feel like Trae is going to be willing to make this whole Dejounte Murray piece work, right? Because he kind of stood up and said, hey, I can make this work. Or y'all probably need to take a look at this dude. Let's make this happen. Let me have somebody that can come in and can handle the rock as well. So I think that Trae has some incentive to make this work. So if down the line there's an opportunity to bring another guy in or third piece in, like they can go ahead and do that because, like, hey, he stood up for this. He said this behind closed doors. Like, hey, I want this to make this work. We can make it work. They make it work, and then you make yourself more attractive. And I think you can kind of pursue away these little rumblings about him not being a likable guy amongst his peers, because we know that matters to you. That matters. That matters when it comes to on-court chemistry and all that stuff. So we'll definitely see. But I think it's going to be something that is going to have to be a wait and see mode when it comes to Trae Young about how this Dejounte Murray piece works out.
And that requires maturity. So we will see if there has been an evolution there, because the other piece there, it just does. But I think the other piece there is this. Oftentimes players are paying attention to what's hot and what's popping. And right now, the Hawks aren't doing anything to make themselves relevant. They were relevant for a hot second with that 5-game winning streak, but for the most part, they've not been a part of the conversation about the top tier teams in the East. So when you're not a part of that conversation, it is that much more difficult to get in the All-Star game unless you are just like this, like you're blowing everybody out of the water, like LeBron James. Yeah, the Lakers suck right now, but it's LeBron James. So he's still going to get deference there. But I think a lot of it, or some of it, may also have to do with the lack of relevance of the Hawks. Therefore, Trae is just not on people's radar like that anymore. But I feel like that may not be a bad thing if, from a maturity perspective, and maybe even a #petty perspective, Trae can use this as motivation to say, yes, I'm perfecting my all-around game, which I still believe that's a big part of why his numbers are down. He is giving some efforts trying to be better defensively. But now he has to say, okay, how do I take what I've been doing, take what they didn't give me as the shine I maybe feel I deserve, and use that as motivation?
Wow, man, I think he's just going to have to continue to, feel the game out, right, with Dejounte Murray on the floor, and sometimes even when he's not on the floor with Dejounte Murray, and I think that's going to be something that they're going to have to watch play out as we go along during the season, because it's pretty clear that just the overall chemistry and how things flow and how things work, they haven't found that right mix, because it's been so up and down, right? It'll be nights where you see like, man, this really can work. And then the next night, you're like, why did this get put together? Like, who did this? Whose decision was it to put this roster together like this? And you can't have that to both opposite ends of the spectrum like that. It has to be a balance. So once they find that balance, I think that I think they'll be able to, do some things. But until then, they're going to be continue to spin their wheels.
Yeah. And this is not a story that's just one that we're following locally. This is national stories, because of course everybody's talking about who got snubbed, like Joel Embiid isn't a starter, how Sway. If you want to hear more of reaction about the biggest stories across sports, like the snubs for the starters, because of course also the All-Star Reserve list will be announced next Thursday, but today you can hear it on Locked On Sports Today. Also, we gave you our picks for the championship games, the conference championship games in the NFL this weekend. I'm sure those guys at Locked On Sports Today have their picks as well and can let you know why. You want to know about it? You know where to go. You check us out on YouTube. You check us out wherever you download your podcast. So we want you to check out Locked On Sports Today. And we're about to get into For the Culture, right? They also have their version, which is Take of the Day. So don't forget, after you wrap up ATL Day 1s, give a few extra minutes to check out Locked On Sports Today.